Did you know that there are power in your words? In fact, whatever you're saying out of your mouth every day is either going to make or break you. In this message, I'm going to get more spiritual. I'm going to share with you how I flipped my life upside down, all by changing what was coming out of my mouth. Hello friends, and welcome back. And if it's your first time here, my name is Lindy. I wasted 23 years of my adulthood going nowhere. And now I share the lessons I had to learn and help other women see their potential, change their mindset, and grow fulfilling lives. If that's something you're ready to do, then you should subscribe and stick around. Look, life is way too short. We have no more time to waste spinning our wheels and going nowhere. So let's just jump right into this. When I was at my ultimate low, I really had to do some self-reflecting and wake up out of some toxic behaviors that I had taken on. And this is how it happened. I told you this is going to be a more spiritual lesson, so just bear with me. And I know there's ways you're going to be able to apply this to your own life, regardless of your personal beliefs. I was taking a walk around my park. Again, having one of my pity parties, crying with myself, absolutely miserable. And I'm going by the tennis courts. Now the tennis courts have those tall fences. You've probably all seen them. And as I'm going by this tennis court, I'm reminded in my heart, in my spirit, in my soul, that of what experience I had with my neighbor. My neighbor and I, a couple of times we went to go play tennis together. And she finally said to me, she said, you know, Lindy, I'm not going to play tennis with you anymore because it's no fun. And the reason it was no fun was because I was always trying to get this super powerful hit that would it would be unstoppable, like the superstar best hit in the whole wide world that anybody could do. And every once in a while, I'd actually get it, and it was untouchable. She could not retrieve it, no matter what she did, and it was right in the line. It was a great hit. But most of my hits went sailing over the fence, or they were out of bounds, and they were just crazy and wild, and she couldn't even engage with them. And then I remembered how when I used to work at a ranch, and some ranchers took me to a rodeo. And in this rodeo, the horses were known for not bucking. They would just fly around the arena with the rider on the back, and he'd hold his feet up and they're just whipping around running. And it was kind of comical because the horse is supposed to buck and the rider's supposed to hold his heels up past the shoulder blades, and that's how they win, how long they can keep their feet up and stay on the horse. But these horses wouldn't buck. So I asked the ranchers, I'm like, these horses were young and gorgeous and super powerful. And I'm like, why aren't these horses being used at a ranch? And then I learned that the horses wouldn't be broken. And when a horse won't be broken, it won't learn to give into the bridle. It won't learn to listen to the rider. And it's basically not useful at all on a ranch. The ranch, they're way too expensive to keep. So they'll ship them off to the rodeo, sell them to the rodeo. And then I'm like, well, what happens if they won't buck? What happens if the rodeo can't use them? And they just all kind of snickered. And I understood that that's when those young, beautiful, powerful horses actually get slaughtered and used as all kinds of things, violin strings and glue and, all those things that we've heard of that horse parts are used for. Isn't that so sad? Anyway, my life was sad like that. I was young at that point. I was younger. I had a lot of energy. I was super powerful, but I knew God was showing me that I was useless because my tongue was out of control. I knew He was showing me that people couldn't engage with me because I was so out of control with my mouth. My heart, my motives were all out of whack. And basically every once in a while, I would say something that was super powerful. It would land right in there. It was unstoppable and would gain me a point. But most of what I was saying and doing was absolutely useless. Same with the horses. I wouldn't be broken by, let's just say my rider's Jesus, right? Or whatever, you won't be broken by listening to the messages that people in this world of all kinds of faiths are sharing that will help you have a more productive life. If you won't be broken and listen to what they're saying, you are going to keep riding out of control and you're useless. And I knew I was being shown that I was useless and I was just taking up space. It sounds awful, and I'm not just like beating myself up. It was true, and I had to admit it, and I had to really self-examine and figure out, how do I turn this around? How do I get control of my life and make it what I want it to be? And this is what I had to really hunker down and get serious. I had to stop looking at everything outwardly and making excuses for my situation being so miserable by blaming my spouse, by blaming my employer, by blaming my family, by blaming my neighbors and friends. And I really just had to take full accountability for where I was at. And I had to look at what I was believing and thinking and saying out of my face. What was coming out of this orifice? It wasn't good. And you know, the funny thing is I knew all this in my head, but just because we know something and what is right to do does not mean we're doing it. And you know, the Bible calls that being a hearer of the word and not a doer of the word. So I was being a hearer, but I was not being a doer. And I had to admit that to myself, and I had to knock it off, and I had to start doing what I knew was right. And this is what I did. That is when I started really, that was when I really just hunkered down with Lindy. And I got real. I started reading material, and I'm going to share below some of my favorite books and speakers that really, I'll just say, God used to save my life before it was too late, so while I still had time to do something useful with it. So make sure you check those out. Anyway, what I started doing was I found some resources like the ones I'm going to share, and I started reading them and listening to them and writing them down and making the things I wanted to be. I wrote them on a paper, and I made sure I looked at them every day, and I spoke them out of my mouth. Because look, even just think about the horse. That horse is going to go in the direction that the bridle is steering it. And the bridle is where your tongue is. And what's going to come out of that tongue is going to steer you, your body, your horse, your life in the direction that you wanted it to go. So I wrote down where I wanted my life to go. And then I started thinking it. I started seeing it. I made the vision boards that I've talked about. And I stayed laser focused on those desires that I had. Then when I went out into my, I say reality because those words were actually my reality, but when I went out into my current manifested life, I had to, no matter what, not get angry and bitter. I'm not saying I didn't get upset, because I did, but I didn't let it make me hold bitterness and grudges against the other person, and really harness my words and just stay in a place of constant forgiveness and not responding or reacting quickly, but thoughtfully, and just going back to my list and controlling my words. Once I did this, and this was the hardest part of this whole journey, was taking control of my thoughts and my words and then my actions. Then I was able to start steering my life in the direction I wanted it to go and to start making progress. Basically, it's like this. It's like, this is you and you're this gear, okay? And then this is the answer over here to make movement to go in the direction you want. This is the power source over here. For me, I'll say that's God, okay? So if I'm going to lock in and our gears are going to connect and start turning and staying together to create an actual movement in the direction I want to go, I am going to have to start agreeing with this source to make the movement. Because if I'm just going to badmouth everybody and let my words run rampant, be a loose cannon and talk mean about people behind their back and complain about what everybody else is doing wrong instead of taking accountability about and for myself, I'm just loosely spinning around useless. I have to stop. I had to stop. I had to rein it in. And I still have to do this today in different parts of my life and things that I still want to see growth in. I have to do the same practice for those things. And then when I harness them and I bring them in and I put them under control and I lock into that power source now. And then no matter what's going on around me, we stay hooked and we start turning and our gears get engaged, and then boom, things can start manifesting. But it starts inside first, and changing our thoughts and our words. Remember, this whole point is your words hold power, and you need to be aware of what is coming out of your mouth. I hope this helps you. And make sure you check out these resources or these names and books. They're fabulous. They really helped me. And if these aren't your kind of thing, then find something that is and start making some progress. See you again real soon.